Hello and welcome to Dear Diary. Dear Diary is a narrative series that tells the story of an African woman. It is interesting, educative and entertaining. New episodes are uploaded on Mondays. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe and share. Dear Diary, it's been 6 weeks since I graduated. So far, I have dropped 9 job applications and I have been called for 1 interview. But before I get into that, let's get to meet my family. Our firstborn, or perhaps I should say firstborns, because they are actually twins, are Kongla Victory Sante and Kongwe Victoria Sante. These two are always at loggerheads with each other. I really can't explain why. Victory was born about 6 minutes before Victoria, but Victory is rather calmer and more respectful. I would say she is more peaceful. She's married and lives in Yaoundé. She was delivered of a baby boy 2 weeks ago. Victoria is single and lives here in Bamenda with the rest of us. After the twins, there is Jimla Elsa, the genius of the family. She's presently studying medicine in the University of Buea. She's in her 6th year. I am certain she will make us proud. Her benefactor is Mr. Ndumbe Peter, her high school mathematics teacher. And then there is Prosper, Sante Prosper, photocopy of my dad, who spends his time idling around. He refused to go to school after he had his GCE advanced levels, 2 papers, philosophy and religion, both E grades. My dad says he's the lost sheep of the family. He leaves the house every morning and comes back in the evening, doing nothing in particular with his life. He has no plans whatsoever for his future. There is me and then Mickey. I am 10 years older than Mickey. He's 13 years old and in his 3rd year of secondary school, that is, Form 3. He's very close to my son Paul. He's very smart, hardworking, neat and decent. Mickey is my favorite sibling. Now about the job interview I was called for. That was a month ago. I dropped the application and the very next day I was called for an interview. The job advert had stated that they needed a cashier, but after the interview, something told me this job had been highly overrated. I was hired immediately, and for this reason, I had a strong feeling it wasn't authentic. I was to begin work the next day. It was a new credit union, Opambelewa Cooperative Credit Union. My job description stated that my main responsibility was to move from house to house, shop to shop, convincing people to create an account at the credit union. Once I got the clients, I had to go to their various locations every morning, collect their daily savings, register them in an exercise book, and then bring the money to the office. We call this job Akao. I had to be an Akao. The manager told me it was going to make me a millionaire if only I could persevere. I started like you. Look where I am now, he said. Where was he? I thought. He was nowhere near where I wanted to be. He didn't look anything like a millionaire. And my starting salary? 20,000 francs per month. That's like $37. The next morning, which was a Thursday, I started. 7 a.m. prompt. I was at the office in Belewa neighborhood, Bamenda. We lived in my 3 so I had to go to work by taxi. I met a couple of boys and another girl who apparently had been hired too. I wasn't able to convince a single person on that day. The next day, I convinced one person, Auntie Adasa. A week later, I had convinced 4 people, myself included. The job was quite challenging. I had to work long distances under the Hamilton sun. I decided that I would work for a month, collect my first salary, and quit the job. By the end of the month, I had 12 clients whose total savings amounted to 18,600 francs. The manager said my efforts were not good enough and that I had to put in more. He said I would have to be patient because the credit union wasn't making enough money yet to pay us our salaries. Let me get to the point. I wasn't paid a dime. I quit the job that same day. That job had totally drained my energy. Imagine going to the home of an angry couple who probably had a fight the previous night and trying to convince them to open an account. The hungry and angry looking faces who insulted me and drove me away when I tried to convince them. All these efforts in vain. No returns to energy invested. Anyway, like the saying goes, no effort is a waste. A week after my elder sister Victory had put to birth, Mama had traveled to Yaoundé to go help her out with the baby. Mama runs a small provision store in front of the house, so I have been the one taking care of it ever since she traveled. I recently started frying plantain chips and selling in front of the house. It gives me a few extra coins. For the 1 week I have been managing Mama's shop, I have taken note of this particular girl, Manka. She's very dark in complexion and very beautiful. They moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago. She was about 10 at the time, and she was very agile and friendly. She often came to the house to play with Paul. She's now 13, still very beautiful, yet very reserved. She's kind of gloomy every time I see her. She keeps to herself and doesn't seem to have any friends. 4 days ago, Manka stopped by to buy tomatoes. I asked her how she was doing. Fine, that was all she said. For some reason, she was avoiding eye contact. I had a feeling something was not right with her. The next evening, there was no electricity throughout the neighborhood, so Manka stopped by to buy kerosene for the alarm. She was just as gloomy as she had been the previous day. This wasn't the Manka I used to know. This little girl had become a shadow of her old self. I could swear something was not right with her. She lived with her father, mother, 4 brothers and her uncle. Had it been she wasn't living with her immediate family, I would have concluded she was not being treated right. I asked her to sit with me for a few minutes, but she said her mom would scold her if she did. That was quite understandable. They needed the kerosene, so I served her and asked her to come back the next day. She nodded reluctantly and left. My thoughts kept wandering. What could be the problem? Oh no, could she be pregnant? The next day was a Saturday. Around 2 p.m., Manka came to see me. I offered her a bottle of hibiscus juice, which we call fulere. She was grateful for it. I watched as she finished it in one gulp. She must have been very thirsty. There was an awkward silence for about 2 minutes, and then I spoke. I recounted to her the mistakes I had made in my early teenage years, and how I was able to pick up the broken pieces of my life and move on. I did this to make her feel comfortable opening up to me. She listened attentively, and by the time I finished my story, she was in tears. I took her inside to avoid unnecessary attention from the likes of Auntie Adasa. I wiped her tears and told her she could open up to me. She hesitated for a few minutes, but thankfully she did. It's unbelievable what I heard from Manka. How can a 13-year-old go through so much in such a long time without anyone noticing? Manka's uncle, Ambe, younger brother to her mom, about 32 years old, who had been living with them for 2 years now, had been harassing her. She burst into tears as she recounted her story to me. By the time Manka turned 13, she had lost her virginity to her uncle Ambe. She recounted painfully how he had forced her and told her if she dares tell her parents, she would be beaten and sent to the village. Manka had made a few attempts to talk to her mom, but she was always tired each time she came back home from work. Her mom never discussed puberty or any related topics with her. Her brothers were in boarding school, and her dad was often out of the country. Ambe took advantage of this and fed on her vulnerability. This poor little girl had become so vulnerable that she got preyed on by the same person who was supposed to protect her, her uncle. I I don't know how I felt after hearing this, but I know I was angry, sad, bitter, surprised, shocked, and confused all at the same time. Why would anyone do something this terrible to his own niece? Well, yesterday evening, I went to Manka's house. I called her mom aside and told her everything Manka had told me. She asked Manka and Manka confirmed. She cried like a baby for neglecting her own daughter for this long. Presently, Ambe is at the My4 police station. His fate is yet to be decided. Manka's mom is very grateful that I told her about it instead of gossiping. For once in my life, I feel like I have actually done something right. It's a wonderful feeling. In our African society, most people still consider discussing certain topics with their children a taboo. Children grow up, go through puberty, adolescence, and become youths and even adults without ever having proper advice from their parents and guardians. This exposes the children a lot because they tend to take advice from their friends who themselves are children. Lots of young people are crying in silence, but their parents hardly even notice. Dear Diary, today, responsibility is the word. Being accountable for myself and the people around me. Being more loving towards the people I meet. Bringing as much positive energy as I can to those I meet. Paying close attention to the needs of my son and all the other children around me. A better society is the collective responsibility of everyone. Hey, wait a minute. I just got a call from Alice. Guess who she met this evening in Douala? Ari. Yes, Ari, father of my son, Paul.